Hello everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a interesting topic, and that is going to be discussing asexual and aromantic stories and the kind of problems that I see these books running into. So for this discussion topic, the problem with asexual and aromantic books, I am going to be going through different books to kind of discuss this point. And for this, I have read some other asexual aromantic books, but for this I really wanted to focus in on books where the main character is asexual aromantic. So if you see a book missing, it could be that, again, it's a side character, or I didn't feel like it was relevant enough to discuss here. But if you see something missing, I would love a recommendation. I'm always looking to read more. And maybe the problem that I'm finding with asexual aromantic books is that I haven't read enough of them. That could totally be a thing. There are not a lot of asexual aromantic books out there. There's only more growing every single day. Spoiler warning, my thesis for this is that not that asexual aromantic books are bad, it's just that I like all of these. Sometimes I don't like them, but I have all of these asexual aromantic books. They're not bad necessarily, but I need more of them because I want other things now. So this video idea really started off when I read Dear Wendy. I have a review for this. It should be out before this video, but Dear Wendy is a coming of age story about two first years in college who start a online kind of battle between each other and then in person are becoming good friends unbeknownst to the other persona that they have online. And the main focus of this book is they are coming together and becoming really good friends because they share an asexual aromantic identity, and they are on the side of the spectrum that is really sex repulsed, really relationship repulsed. Both of them don't see either of those things happening for them in their life. And the problem of this book for me is that a lot of the conversations really pulled away from the characters' internal journeys and was really focusing in on these like kind of Tumblr style conversations where it was just like finite little things about identity, which as a young reader I could see why this would be very valuable because it would feel really relatable. But for someone like me that's a little bit older, it felt like I was reading Tumblr posts from like 12 years ago. Are we not past this? Can we talk about something else? Can the story just exist for itself? Because I feel like there's some really interesting, deep emotional things in here that the story could go into, but the story was kind of sidelined to have these kind of Tumblr conversations about identity. And so that got me thinking about the other asexual aromantic books that I have read. And I'll be honest, I haven't read a lot of books where the main character is aromantic and not asexual. I have a couple books in here that are just asexual characters. I will give warning when it's needed when a character is asexual and not aromantic, but for the most part I think we can kind of think of all of these books as characters that are mainly almost all asexual with sexual repulsion with just a hint of aromanticism either in full or on the side, but we'll discuss it. The reason why Dear Wendy had me thinking of these issues is because there are a couple books that I feel are pretty comparable to Dear Wendy. So first I have Let's Talk About Love, which is by Claire Kahn, which is the first aromantic asexual book I have ever read. This character is asexual. She does not identify as aromantic, and it is again another college slice of life story, and our character is getting out of a relationship. I believe her past relationship, she has had sex. She was not really into it. She didn't really want to do it, and she broke up because her girlfriend was pressuring her into having sex when she was just not really enjoying it. And so this book kind of focuses in on a new blooming relationship between her and a new person, and she's sworn off for the summer having this romantic relationship, but she's falling in love with this guy anyway, and so they're trying to navigate this new relationship where she thinks, you know, she doesn't really want to have sex and might not want to for the entirety of their relationship, and just kind of dealing with that. And people do not like this book. The asexual community along with that, I believe. This is one of the first ace books that I remember coming out where the character, you know, is stating she is asexual, and this came out in 2018, so it's been a while since I've read it, but I remember seeing some of the issues that people were running into. There's a moment where she does feel a little bit of sexual desire. It seems a little bit like, honestly, I can't remember what people had problems with this. I think it was just that she wasn't completely sex repulsed and she wasn't completely romantically repulsed, and I believe the other issue is that people thought she read a little bit juvenile, a little bit young. I was younger when I read this, so I didn't have as many problems with it. Something in this book stuck out to me because I tabbed it, and I don't normally tab books, but like I can see why people didn't like this, why it didn't work for people. But I really commend this book because it's an outlier in a lot of asexual books for me, because a lot of books that have asexual characters at the forefront don't want to deal with asexual characters that are willing to compromise. Let's be honest, a lot of asexual aromantic people have relationships, have sex lives, enjoy sex, do it even though they don't necessarily love it. There's a lot of different people out there, and so for me, this book gets a lot of props because it's willing to have a relationship budding and to kind of like talk about and compromise. Because yeah, sometimes asexual characters think about sex, sometimes they have sex, sometimes they read a lot of smutty fan fiction online. You know, it's a wide range. At the time, I remember liking this because the character was dealing with a lot of outside issues. It wasn't just this relationship, and I think that added a lot of balance to this story. But I wonder if I would feel the same way about that now, because my problem with this is that there were too many things going on and there wasn't kind of this central character focus, and it felt like the identities were taking away from that central focus about what the characters were learning about themselves outside of identity. It didn't feel like there was really a story, or there was a story, but the book was focusing in a lot on just having superfluous conversations with each other instead of having a real story. And there is another book that kind of falls into the Dear Wendy camp, and I feel like it is the most similar to Dear Wendy because it deals with another sexually repulsed, romantically repulsed, asexual, aromantic individual. And it's also about going to college for the first year, starting new relationships, having friendship drama, and that's going to be Loveless by Alice Oseman, which I feel like is also highly debated and kind of polarizing as a book. For me, I really enjoyed when I read this. It just felt so relatable. This was the first time that I read a fully sex repulsed, romantically repulsed, asexual, aromantic individual. It was the first time seeing a real like queer platonic relationship play out and how that dynamic would kind of work. And it was also dealing with a character that loves love. They love the idea of romance, but anytime it kind of gets close to them, anytime someone is interested in them, that's when they like, you know, want to dip out. So this book, it was like the first book that I had read with it. It was touching on something. It was getting to something, and it wasn't perfect for me. I really wish the queer platonic relationship had been a little bit more of a focus, but this book felt like it was doing something that other books hadn't. But again, by the time I got to Dear Wendy, that has similar plot beats, that has similar premise, it didn't quite work for me. And so if I reread this, would I have the same problems? Would this be a little bit too Tumblr talking about identity? Possibly. But unfortunately, I think the thing is that Alice Oseman is a much more seasoned writer, and their whole thing, Alice Oseman's whole thing, is writing these slice of life stories. Some of them hit for me, some of them don't, but I think they are a lot more used to writing in that lens of having a character and having a day in the day life kind of story for them and making it satisfying. Like, while you could say basically nothing happens in either of these books, this one might just be a little bit more successful at that just because Alice Oseman is a lot more used to writing in that kind of style. But a lot of people, again, like I said, don't like this. It's funny because there aren't that many asexual books, but already people are done with having characters that are very shy, very reserved, very online, very into fandom, and just very much love the idea of romance, love writing romance, reading romance stories, but don't want it for themselves. That is a very big characteristic, I feel like, with a lot of asexual, aromantic characters. And like, I get it because I'm also there, like, that is me. I just think it's very interesting because this is one of the first examples where a main character is sexually, romantically repulsed. That is like the whole beat of the story. People were already done with that by the time they were reading this. And, you know, by the time we were getting to this, I was also kind of like, we're covering similar ground again. But with all these books, they are important, they are necessary. I believe that people would get a lot out of these, that they would find them relatable. I am not disavowing that these things should exist, that these things shouldn't still be written because they are a value. But for me as a reader, I am personally like past these stories. If I got another asexual, aromantic book about someone discovering their identity in college or high school, about someone just dealing with like internal ace-phobia or just dealing with internal problems with asexual aromanticism, I kind of wouldn't want to read it, you know? Dear Wendy specifically did something really special though with an internal problem, which is Jo, one of the main characters, is really struggling with the idea of her friends in relationships. She's worried about being left out. She's worried about being left behind. She always feels like she's the one that's left behind in relationships because romantic relationships are viewed as the end-all be-all, whereas friendships aren't. That is so relatable. That is such a real point. That is a real story in there. Unfortunately, the book didn't focus enough on that for me personally, but like, that's what I want. If we're gonna focus on an asexual character in like this kind of contemporary coming of age style, and if asexuality is going to be the main focus of the story, that's what I need. I need something so specific to a character, so specific to a journey. I need the actual coming of age part about the character realizing something, of coming to terms with something. So for me, can I have characters that are internally asephobic towards themselves? Yeah, because it's a real thing people have to deal with. I don't mind that. Again, I don't even mind these stories necessarily of characters dealing with internal asexual aromanticism. That's not my problem. The problem is that these coming of age stories are not even trying to do something similar. It's just that they get too wrapped up in dissecting all the little nitty gritties of asexual identity that it forgets the story sometimes. And let's be honest, you need the story. You need something else. These relatable parts are joyful to read. They are so heartwarming to read, especially for the first time. But if I want to read another asexual book, I'm gonna need something different. I'm gonna need a character story. At a certain point, I'm just like, I gotta hand someone this. This is what you need to read. This is the nonfiction. It's gonna tell you everything about the identity. It's gonna tell you all the nitty-gritty details. These can focus on the characters. These don't need to be a nonfiction. They don't need to cover every single little facet unless it's really important to the character and their story, their journey somehow. But one thing that I found really funny, when I was looking at all my asexual books on my shelf, 3 of these have, well, I don't know about this one. I don't think this one has been read enough, but these 2, they, I don't want to say controversy because I don't think these books really did anything wrong. They have their haters, and a vast amount of haters for the amount of people that I think actually read these 2 books. I feel like they're unjustly divisive for some weird reason. People call them boring, they call them immature, blah blah blah, and like, again, I had my problems with all 3 of these books, but I'm just like, okay, this is a lot. And it kind of became a running theme with the rest of the asexual aromantic books on my shelf. So Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland is one of the YA books where it really tries to tackle an asexual person. This is from 2019, so around the same time as Let's Talk About Love. But what's interesting for this book is that it's a fantasy. So there is a relationship, there's kind of a romance, a dark romance, I guess you would call it. The important thing you need to know here is that the book was kind of disastrous and not very good in my opinion. And one of the main issues that I didn't like this book for is it spent, again, a lot of time, like, I don't know, just laying out the foundation for what an asexual relationship identity is. Like, it spent a really long time, like, trying to build, like, a fantasy way to say this character is asexual and it's okay because there's a bunch of people that feel this way. And again, it's really focused on this, like, dark, will they, won't they, like, weird villain main character relationship, adding the asexual factor into that. But unfortunately, this book was just, like, really boring. That's just the main point of it. Like, was there a story there? Sure. Was there interesting points about identity? Was it willing at least to bleed the kind of spectrum of asexuality? Okay, yeah, it did. But, like, would I recommend this? Not necessarily, because I didn't think it was very interesting or good to read. And one of the main problems with that is that the fantasy element, the kind of actual plot element, was kind of washed out because it was so focused in, again, on, like, the identity stuff, the relationship stuff, and trying to contextualize the identity inside the relationship, that it didn't have time to focus on, like, the actual story that needed to be going on. So there's that. So, like, that one has a lot of controversy just because people didn't really like it, but, like, I get it. But let's get on to Kiss Her Once for Me and The Charm Offensive, which do have some controversy for them as well. So these are the only 2 adult books on the list that I have. I believe there's another Claire Kahn book that has an asexual main character, but I haven't read that one yet. So as far as I know, these are really the only 2 with, like, an asexual queer protagonist. These books have problems for other reasons. People dislike this for, like, the messy character dynamics and relationships, and I get that, but people also really don't like these for the asexual representation. I believe both of these characters are demisexual. In Kiss Her Once for Me, she kind of has, like, this, like, epiphany moment where it's, like, attraction at first sight kind of thing, which she's never really experienced before, and this character doesn't even know that he's on the asexual aromantic spectrum. It's kind of him not even realizing he's gay because, like, he just doesn't experience sexual or romantic attraction to people to begin with. And I'm sorry, but I get both of these. If you are recommending an asexual book to someone, I can understand why you wouldn't want to recommend this one, because people that are not on the asexual aromantic spectrum are just not gonna get it, and they might use this book as kind of like a see, you know, people aren't like that. But, like, yeah, sometimes asexual aromantic people, it doesn't happen very often for them where they lie on the spectrum. Sometimes they do become sexually interested in somebody even without the deep connection that demisexual. I mean, technically, if you want to get complicated about it, maybe Alison Corcoran should have named her as Ace Flux or something else, but, like, you know what? This character identifies as demisexual asexual. They've never experienced sexual attraction like this. It happened, whatever, you know? Can't we just like let characters be asexual on the spectrum and just like experience relationships? And then we have the charm offensive, where again, lots of mess, a character not really realizing they're gay or bi because of the asexual stuff. And this again is another book that people are like, is that really asexual? And I'm just like, I'm so sick of that. Asexuals in relationships. I think it's hard because these books either want to have just like characters that are so sexually repulsed, romantically repulsed, and that's all there is. There isn't really other examples of asexuality. And then we have characters that are asexual. There's some that don't want romantic relationships. There's some that are willing to kind of compromise and, you know, kind of work through things. And then there's people that experience some sexual attraction on some level. So like those are all diverse examples, but also like people have problems with all of them and the representation. So it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, because asexual is such a spectrum, it seems like no matter what you do, people are gonna have problems with it. They're not gonna agree with it. One of the problems I have with these books is like when you have the relationship as a major focus for these asexual, aromantic books, because they are trying to make them so appealing or understandable to a non-asexual, aromantic person or an allosexual person, it just shows a very, even though that these are all queer relationships, almost shows like a heterosexual kind of watered down version of asexuality. Like it's almost appealing too much to the allosexual. I know we've seen this with a lot of books that have to do with race, a lot of LGBT books. People say, this really doesn't feel like it was written for a gay audience of mine. It feels like it was written for a straight reader. And like, I get that. And I feel that. I feel that in these books. I don't think that's a bad thing. We need people outside of our experiences to see these books and read them. Also, I can get why these books are frustrating for asexual, aromantic readers because it doesn't feel like it's written for them. But at the same time, it's like, if you show anything different than what somebody expects from an asexual person or an aromantic person, then you start to have controversy, or people are like, hey, this character doesn't feel like they are asexual, aromantic. And it's so hard, again, because it's a spectrum. No one example is going to give you that. And that is the major flaw, my friends. That is the big thing. If we have more examples of main characters that are asexual, aromantic, there's going to be more examples of what this identity can mean to somebody. Because yes, we do need these learning books. We need these building blocks where people can just like experience what it's like to live like that and understand that. We need those building block introductory stories that really teach you stuff. We also just need asexual, aromantic characters being messy. We need them getting into relationships, a wide range of the different relationships. And it's just as much as we need like books that are a little bit too nonfiction-y, a little bit too reliant on explaining every little facet of asexual aromanticism. We need the books that are not afraid to be imperfect, because that's one of the major problems with the asexual, aromantic books. Too many of the books are trying to have perfect examples of asexuality and aromanticism. They think that they have to have perfect main characters that are asexual and aromantic. And like, sure, maybe we do need a couple more of those books. I'm not gonna deny we need more asexual, aromantic books. I'm okay having more, but we also need more outside of that. We need characters being messy, living life, having plots that have nothing to do with their identity, and where that's just like a big factor of themselves, but is not taking over the main plot, you know? And I mean, we need books that are talking about the identity, that are making asexuality, aromanticism a main point of the plot, but that like identity talk, the little itty bitty bits, are not getting into it as much. Or if they are particular to the character, and we don't have to discuss every single other little thing about aromanticism, asexuality, to come to know and understand this character as one example of asexuality, aromanticism. But I have a couple more asexual, aromantic books that do fall into these two things. So let's look at two asexual, aromantic books that I actually enjoyed. So we have A Lat's Away by Darcy Little Badger. The main character identifies on page as ace, but it seems like they might also be aromantic, because A Lat's Away does not seem interested in having any romantic relationships. This is about a character who, because they are indigenous, can see ghosts and interact with ghosts. This is a paranormal world where a lot of people have different magical abilities, but because of her heritage, she has that ability. And her story takes place when her cousin ends up going missing and is possibly killed, and she is going to get to the bottom of it with her family and her best friend. And so this is an asexual book where the main character is ace, possibly aromantic, and it's discusses that, but it's so not focused on that. It's focused on the relationship, it's focused in on the family dynamic, it's focused in on this mystery plot and this magical stuff that's going on. And I feel like this is a success story for asexual representation because it adds in those relatable details, it has those little things, but it's not stuck in it. It has other stuff going on. It has a coming of age story that's enwrapped in something else. The next book I have is Alice Oseman's Radio Silence, where this is kind of an outlier because the main character is bisexual and it is her friend that she is connecting with and becoming close to, Aled, who is asexual and in a relationship. This story is interesting because I would say Aled is the main character, but Frances is the POV character. Frances does have her own like story beats and her own self-discovery journey, but in a lot of ways this is really about Aled dealing with his anxiety. But the reason why this book works for me, why this has remained my favorite Alice Oseman book, is because despite it being slice of life like all of Alice Oseman books, I feel like this one really succeeds having a slice of life book. I don't know why some slice of life book contemporary YA books work and some don't. They're really hard to do, again, in my opinion. This one has always been compelling, and I think it's because it focuses in on that queer platonic relationship between these two, that connection that they find in each other, and it doesn't feel like kind of saccharine or bogged down with like identity talk or other things. And this is a book I definitely need to reread. I do want to know if I feel the same way, but for me, I've always thought of this as Alice Oseman's most successful story. I think it just narratively works the best. That's because it's a coming of age story where we have these characters with these identities, but again, it doesn't get bogged down in that. It's a part of these characters, it's a part of their journey and why their story unravels the way it does, and it doesn't get into too much random nitty-gritty Tumblr identity talk, because again, those identity talk, I get why they're important, I get why they're relatable, I get why we need to have them, and I get why a younger reader would really like them, but we need more books like this that are probably gonna end up being narratively long-lasting books because they feel more like narrative stories. So again, we end this giant long saga saying, hey, we have a good stack of asexual aromantic books now, and we need more different representations. I want to see more of the spectrum. I want to see different stories. I want to see more asexual characters just fighting it out. I want to see different stories. That's what I want from here on out. That is the problem with asexual books. These books, I feel like a lot of times water down, get too nitty-gritty because they want to relate to a lot of people and they want people to understand asexual and aromantic books. But when they do that, they end up being books that are not going to have a lot of lasting power because they aren't narratively focused, and ironically don't end up being relatable to a lot of people or interesting to a lot of people because they forget to have plot outside of stuff. I don't know. It's complicated. If you have thoughts on this, opinions, if you can dissect my rambling, I would love to discuss that with you in the comments. But before we go, let me talk about some of my favorite asexual, not asexual characters. And I'm sorry, but they are all adult sci-fi fantasy because I felt like that's what we were missing. We were missing adult books, and we're missing books with action, so this is what I'm gonna get you. So the first book I have on this list is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I've read the first 3 books in this series so far, and this series focuses in on Murderbot, who is a AI but partly organic being who is created basically to be like a big security guard on these like space missions, but they've gone rogue and they're like, I don't give a fuck, I do what I want now. I hate humans, I hate dealing with them, I'm just gonna do what I want and watch my little crummy soap operas. And they get dragged into a lot of sci-fi beats where they're like, oh, I have to go save people, I hate this. And so they act like they hate people, but there's obviously a lot of compassion there underneath. And it's really about them forming all these little bonds and friendships with people along the way. And so I get it. Non-binary people and asexual aromantic people, I get not liking characters that are non-human, especially robotic AI stuff being portrayed as asexual aromantic. I get it so hard, but when it's done right, it's perfect. Personally, what I have the problem with is when robots and AI are given the ability to love, because to me that's like, oh, this really is a real human being because they have the ability to have romantic attraction, or they have the ability to have romantic feelings. And I'm like, no, that isn't what makes a person a person. That's what pisses me off. So honestly, I feel like it's kind of a slay to have the robot characters as asexual aromantic representation examples, because for me it proves that they are human or have human feelings without having those dynamics. I've only read the first 3 books, so I don't know if this will change. I'm really hoping hoping it doesn't, because one of the things I love about Murderbot is how they're like, sex is gross, I skim through those bits when I'm watching my soap operas, who wants to watch that? And they're like, romantic relationships, no, I do not want that. I don't want my parts being used for that, blah blah blah. Just like, I love them for that. Is relatable shit, that is good shit. If you've ever been a recluse, if you've ever been an asexual, aromantic person that's like not wanted friendships because they're afraid of losing friendships, this discusses all that without getting weird or allosexual about it. So yeah, this is my first recommendation, but we will be getting into examples that are not necessarily asexual, aromantic. It's a little more fuzzy, but that is a good one. So next we have Monk Chi from The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Mi Vo. There are 5 novels out so far. They kind of break some of the rules, but for the most part they are celibate, or at least I believe they are celibate. We haven't been told otherwise. And there are other queer relationships in this story. In the 5th book, it does seem like there is attraction for Chi to somebody else, but I believe it is all fabricated, like it's like feelings forced upon them, and I believe that's one of the reasons why they know somebody is playing a trick on them, because they're like, wait, why am I falling for this person? I don't feel that way. But really, this story is about Chi, who is a monk who goes around collecting stories in this kind of fantastical version of China. And they also have a bird companion who helps them collect these stories. And the first 2 novels are like peak, so good. I just love them so much. But as we get further into the series, as we learn more about Chi, they definitely feel like an asexual, aromantic character to me. They're not really, you know, they're celibate. They're a monk. They don't really care about all this other crap. They're more focused on connecting with people, learning their stories, collecting their stories, and I love that for them. I love this story. It's a good example to me so far, and I would recommend it. So the next book we have is A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. First of all, love Becky Chambers. Love all of their stuff. They have some other books with asexual characters. I believe in Song for the Wild Built, the robot character doesn't have sexual or romantic feelings for people, and To Be Taught If Fortunate has an asexual character, but that is a side character. I'm sure there are other side characters that are asexual, aromantic, but Closed and Common Orbit is my favorite book. And it also deals with a android being, again, a AI person. So this is a dual point of view story. I believe one of the characters is Jane, and you're learning about their history, about how they came into themselves, how they got where they are. And then the other character is Lovelace, who was an AI ship from the first book, and now they are in a human body. There's spoilers for why that is, but I won't get into it. But it's them having this self-discovery journey, and I personally would consider Lovelace asexual, aromantic. They don't seem interested in relationships. They don't really seem interested in sex beyond a mild curiosity of it. It's all about the friendship dynamics for Lovelace, or Lovey as they're called. And you know what, again? I hate that all my examples of good aroace relationships are these non-human people. But again, there's something so powerful about saying that, hey, this AI person, you have sympathy for them, you see them as human, and they don't have sexual or romantic attraction. So there you go. And then the final book that I would deem as a good example of an aroace character is The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitsani. This book is dealing with a crew of young women who are launched into space to get away from a dying Earth. There's a lot of different stuff in here. Politics are a big theme, conservation, saving the Earth. Our main character, Asune, is dealing with like this murder mystery plot that they're trying to figure out, while also dealing with past stuff, with a mother-daughter relationship that is really fraught, with a lot of crewmates that she has really fraught relationships with. There's a lot going on. She doesn't have time to focus on romance, and there is just this one split second in the book where she goes to a party or a bar. A guy is interested in her because she is in the space program. This is in the past. And she's like, I guess I could kiss him, you know, just to, you know, have that experience. I'm like, isn't that the most asexual, aromantic thing you could possibly think? Because up to this point, she is not interested in dating anyone. She does not seem sexually interested in anybody. She doesn't really seem to have any of those feelings. She's got too many other things going on for her to worry about that. And that is the true ace experience I want seen, because despite popular belief, asexual, aromantic people, they don't only think about what they don't have. We also are just like living our lives, and we don't get caught up in all this stuff because we have other stuff going on, you know? So yeah, stories about like the internal struggle of asexuality, again, important, real, yes, people think that way, I have thought that way, but also just having characters that just like not concerned because they got other stuff going on, that's a true experience too. Like sex repulsed, romantic repulsed, definitely a true experience, but just like having a character that's like, yeah, might as well just do it just to do it, I guess, whatever, I don't really care. And like having like no attraction to this person and just doing it to do it is just so funny to me and just so accurate sometimes. And then never having like a sexual or romantic thought ever again and just more concerned about the relationships. That's what makes this an aro ace book. I don't care if the author didn't think of the character that way. I don't care. That's what I see. That's what I like. And this book was also just really good. Again, because there's just so much going on and it just makes my little unfocused brain really happy because I have a lot to focus on. And that's what I need more of. I need more books where the characters are just ace doing other stuff. They're not worried about other things because they just are gonna go be ace. I need more characters that are messy. I need more aro ace characters in general. I need more aro characters by themselves. I need more romance books. I need more literary fiction books. I just need more because these books that have these, again, I don't want to say controversy, but like, I don't know, maybe these books just wouldn't have so much of a campaign against them if we had more examples, if we had other books, if we had more of the spectrum, and if we had more books that don't feel the need to focus on all the little nitty-gritties of a nonfiction. So like, these are important, these are stepping stones, we need them for the kids, we need them for the people that want to learn, we need them. But we also need books that are just gonna appeal to the masses, that are gonna appeal to the aro ace people because they just want books without that kind of stuff in it. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of feeling. I remember a couple months ago there was this video about lesbian books that was kind of popping off, but I was also like, this problem can be solved if it's just a yes and. Because all the lesbian books I've read, I think I've read a lot more than her, there are examples of what that girl was looking for in books. And like, is there a problem in publishing where we're not getting enough ace books, we're not getting enough lesbian books? Yes. We're not getting enough different examples of lesbian and different examples of ace people? Yes, that's a problem. But it's like, for me, that's a yes and problem. It's not that we need to eliminate the books that exist with more conventional relationships. It's that we need just more books, more examples. We just need more and we need different. So yeah, that's where the yes and comes in for me. It's like, I don't want to eliminate these books. I don't think they shouldn't be written anymore. They don't need to be for me because I don't need to read them. It's a yes and problem. We just, yes, this, but also more. But thank you so much if you've made it to the end of this ramble. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions. Again, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later and happy reading.